How much money have you scrubbed off a knife at your own kitchen sink and never known it? Not damaged, not broken, just quietly erased with a green scouring pad and 20 minutes of good intentions on a Saturday morning. My name is Walt Rennick. I am 71 years old. I spent 34 years as a tool and die maker in a plant outside Dayton, Ohio, and I have had somewhere around 9,000 blades across my bench since my grandfather first handed me a rag and a can of oil when I was 9. I don't sell knives. People send me theirs and I send them back. And in this next 20 minutes, I'm going to give you 7 signs in order that tell you whether the old knife in your drawer is worth $40 or $4,000. 7 checks. You can do all of them tonight at your kitchen table with about $30 of tools, and one of them costs nothing at all. Here is the part that costs people money. On an old knife, the dirt is worth more than the shine, the grime, the darkened surface, the softened corners of the handle, the crust in the joint. That is the evidence. Strip it, and you have not restored anything. You have destroyed the paperwork. You have seen the videos. No talking, just a rusted blade going into a bath and coming out the next morning like chrome. Hundreds of millions of views. What those videos never say out loud is how many of those knives were worth 10 times more before the camera turned on. Sanded the maker's stamp clean off the tang, cooked the temper out of the edge on a buffing wheel, mirror polished a satin finish that left the factory satin in 1948, threw the original bone handles in the trash, and poured colored resin in their place. It is quiet, it is pretty, and it is a bonfire made out of money. I am not attacking a person, I am attacking a method. I used that method for 11 years, 80 grit on a block, a wire cup brush chucked in a half-inch drill, a coffee can of vinegar left overnight because I got tired and went to bed, and 10W30 out of the jug in the garage because it was what was open. I made every knife I touched cleaner and cheaper at the same time. The man who stopped me was an appraiser named Harold who worked out of a shop in Xenia and had hands like a catcher's mitt. He looked at a Winchester I had polished until it glowed and said one sentence I have repeated for 40 years. You can always take more steel off tomorrow. You can never put it back. So before we start, if you have a knife you inherited and have been afraid to touch, put it in the comments, not an old pocket knife. Tell me exactly what is stamped on the tang letter for letter and how many blades it has. I read them, and half the time I can date the thing for you. And keep the 7th sign in your head while we go, because it is the only one on this list that costs $0, takes 10 seconds, and it has saved more knives from being ruined than the other 6 put together. Sign number 1 is blade geometry, and it is the one almost nobody checks first. Every knife leaves the factory with a blade of a specific height. That is the distance from the spine, the thick unsharpened back of the blade, down to the cutting edge. Every year of sharpening on a coarse stone takes some of that back. A pocket knife that has been carried and sharpened by a farmer for 40 years does not have the blade it was born with. It has a thin, hollow, sway-backed ghost of it. Here is how you check it in 10 seconds. Open the main blade and lay a straight edge along the cutting edge. A cheap 6-inch steel rule, $4, about the length of your hand. On an unsharpened factory blade, the edge is a straight line or a clean single curve all the way to the tip. On a worn one, you will see daylight in the middle, a shallow belly worn into the center where the man's thumb pressed hardest on the stone. Then look at the plunge line, which is where the flat grind stops and the thick ricasso begins right in front of the handle. On an original blade, that line is crisp and vertical, like the edge of a business card. On a heavily sharpened blade, the edge has crept up toward the spine and left the plunge line looking like a wave. The mechanism is simple. Steel does not grow back. A 1940s Remington sheepfoot blade that has lost 1/16 of an inch of height, that is about the thickness of a nickel, has lost between 30 and 50% of its collector value, even if the finish is perfect. Collectors talk about blade percentage the way car people talk about mileage. 90% blade is money, 60% blade is a user. I learned this the wrong way. I had a Robeson Shurage in 1988 that I put on a coarse stone and reprofiled because I wanted it to shave. I took maybe a 32nd of an inch off the height. It shaved beautifully. It also went from a $200 knife to a $60 knife in about 11 minutes of my life. What you do not do is fix this. Never regrind an old blade to make the edge look straight again. Every pass makes it worse, and the loss is permanent. Sign number 2 is the tang stamp, and this is where the actual dollars live. The tang is the part of the blade that disappears into the handle when the knife closes, and on a folding knife, the maker stamped his mark there, on the flat where you can only read it with the blade open. Brand, sometimes a pattern number, and very often a date code. Get a 10-power loop. $12, small enough to lose in your pocket. Hold the blade under a bare bulb and tilt it until the light rakes across the stamp at a low angle instead of shining straight down. Stamps are struck into the steel, so they read by shadow, not by contrast. Now the codes. Case is the classic. Before roughly 1965, the stamp reads Case 20 with no country line. From about 1965 on, you get Case 20 USA. In 1970, they added 10 dots underneath and removed 1 dot every year through 1979. So a knife with 6 dots left is a 1974. That is not folklore. That is documented by the Case Collectors Club, and it is in every reference book on the subject. Schrade Kutke means before 1946. Schrade Walden means 1946 to about 1973. Winchester only stamped knives from 19 to 1942. Remington made knives from 1920 to 1940 and nothing after. So a genuine Remington bullet knife is by definition 85 years old. And the difference between a legible stamp and a soft one in that pattern is not $100. I have watched it be $1,000. That is the mechanism. The stamp is the only authenticating part of the knife, and it is stored maybe 8 thousandths of an inch deep, which is about 3 sheets of notebook paper. Wire wheel takes that off in under a minute. 60 seconds of ball yanking makes 80% of the value of a knife that survived 2 world wars. When you clean everything except that half-inch of tang. You mask it, you work around it, you leave it dirty forever if you have to. Dirty is fine, gone is gone. So stop here for a second. What I just walked you through, reading a stamp, taking a knife, knowing which half-inch of steel you were never allowed to touch, is about one page of heaven. There are 11 more chapters, but it's all the RESTORER'S BENCH. Knife restoration without moving the knife. It runs 158 pages across 12 chapters, and it is organized by decision, not by product, so you look up what you are staring at instead of guessing. It comes with the bench cards you can keep next to the vise, a one-page safety card, and an index arranged by symptom. The link is in the description, and the QR code is on screen if you would rather use your phone. Tonight is the night you stop being afraid of that drawer. Sign number 3 is the patina, and this is the one the internet gets exactly backwards. There are 2 kinds of oxide on old steel, and they are not cousins. Red rust is hydrated iron oxide. It is porous, it holds moisture against the metal, and it is still eating. Black patina is magnetite. It is dense, it is adherent, it is stable, and it is the reason A 100-year-old carbon blade can come out of a barn with a surface like gun bluing and no pitting underneath. The Canadian Conservation Institute makes exactly this distinction in its notes on caring for metal objects, and museum conservators have worked this way for decades. The professional goal is usually to stop the red and keep the black, not to sand down to bare white steel. Here is why it matters to your wallet. An honest, even undisturbed patina on a carbon steel blade is proof of two things at once. The steel is carbon, not stainless, and nobody has been at it with a buffer. Carbon steels, 1095 W201, and the chrome vanadium that case-stamped CV darken. Stainless steels, 420 AHC, 440C, and cases True Sharp mostly do not. On a lot of American patterns, the carbon version is the earlier and more collectible version. Check it under raking light again. Real patina is uneven in a specific way. Darker where fingers held it, lighter along the spine, gray-brown in the grind marks. A knife that has been chemically blackened or force-patinated in mustard or vinegar is uniform and flat and slightly matte, and it looks wrong the same way a bad toupee looks wrong. Cost to preserve it, $3. Food-grade mineral oil, the kind sold as a laxative at the drugstore, on a rag. That is it. And here is the number that should stick. A buffed carbon blade loses 40 to 60% of its value, and you cannot put patina back. You can grow a new one in 10 years, and it will still look like a new one. I ruined a case CV Stockman for a neighbor in 1979 because I thought I was doing him a favor. It came out silver. He was very polite about it. Sign number 4 is the handle material, and this is where $200 hides in plain sight. Same knife, same year, same stamp. The material bolted to the sides can multiply the price by 5. Learn to tell 4 things apart with your eyes and your fingertips. Genuine stag is antler. It has a rough, irregular, wandering surface with tiny pores, no two panels alike, and it is warm and light in the hand. Jigged bone is smooth bone that has been cut with a machine to imitate stag, so the pattern repeats and the grooves are all the same depth. Delrin is molded plastic, which Case and others went to heavily from the mid-1960s on, and the giveaway is that both sides of the knife have exactly the same pattern because they came out of the same mold. Real pearl is cool to the touch and shows depth when you tilt it like looking into water. The mechanism of value here is scarcity of the raw material. Stag comes from sambar antler. It has to be sorted and matched, and it always costs the factory more. Blade Magazine and the collector clubs have been tracking that spread for 40 years. On a lot of common patterns, stag runs 3 to 5 times the bone version, and bone runs double the Delrin. Now the warning in this one is a genuine hazard to your other knives. Celluloid handles common before about 1950 and beautiful in candy stripe and pearl swirl break down chemically with age. As they decompose, they give off nitrous vapors, and those vapors rust the blade of the knife they are attached to, and every knife stored in the same closed drawer or tube. If you own a pre-war knife with cracked, shrunken, sweating, or vinegar-smelling handles, get it out of the box and away from the rest of the collection today. That is not superstition. That is chemistry, and it has quietly destroyed whole collections. Bone, stag, and pearl do not get wet and do not get warm. Water swells and cracks them. Heat shrinks them, and a dishwasher will finish one in a single cycle. Mineral oil, cotton rag, and beds. Sign number 5 is the walk and the talk, which is the mechanical soul of a slip joint. A folding knife with no lock, held open by a flat spring in the back. Open the blade slowly. You should feel resistance, then a firm click at the half stop. That snatch is the walk. The click is the talk. A well-made American slip joint from the golden era does both with authority, and it does it after 80 years. Then look at the back with the blade fully open, fully closed, and at the half stop, the top of the back spring should sit dead flush with the liners in all three positions. Run your thumbnail across it. If you can catch a step in any of those three positions, someone has been inside the knife or a spring has taken a set. The mechanism is that the spring is heat treated to a lower hardness than the blade, springy rather than hard, and the tang is ground with precise cam surfaces that ride on it. It is watchmaking done with a punch press. Nobody replicates it at a kitchen table. So a knife that walks and talks correctly is a knife that has never been apart, and that is worth 30 to 50% over an identical knife that has been rebuilt. What kills it is oil, not the oil itself, the wrong oil. Heavy motor oil in a slip joint attracts pocket lint, forms a gum, and gives you a mushy, lazy action. 2 drops of light machine oil, the sewing machine kind, worked in with the blade at the half stop. $3 a bottle and it will outlive you. I'll be straight with you. What fits inside 20 minutes of talking is the short version. 7 signs, no diagrams, and a lot of judgment calls I am skipping past because there is no time. The book has 12 chapters, each one organized around a single decision you are about to make, printed in large type because I am 71 and I know how this goes. Every method in it is built around a bench that costs under $40. No power tools, no buffing wheel, no machinery. And every technique carries a check me line with a published dated source underneath it, so you are not taking my word for anything. National Park Service, Conserve Ogram, the Canadian Conservation Institute, the ASM Handbook. There is a 60-day guarantee on it, which I mention only so it is not sitting in the back of your mind. If you have been watching this thinking about a knife that outlived the man who carried it, that is exactly who I wrote it for. Same link under the video, same square code on your screen. Don't let it end with you. Sign number 6 is the absence of the buffer, and learning to spot it is what separates a buyer from a mark. A cloth buffing wheel spinning at 3,000 RPM with polishing compound does not cut like a file, it flows. It rounds everything it touches, and it always rounds the high points first. So here's the checklist, done with your $12 loop and a pen light held nearly flat against the surface. Bolsters, the metal ends of the handle, should have a crisp line where they meet the bone or stag. If that line is soft and the metal looks like it melted slightly into the handle, that is a buffer. The stamp should have sharp vertical walls inside every letter. If the letters look shallow and the serifs are rounded like river stones, that is a buffer. Look down the flat of the blade with light raking across it. Factory grinding leaves straight, parallel lines running one direction. Buffing leaves a wavy, dished surface and a ripple you can see when the light travels across it. Look at the pins that hold the handle on. If the metal around each pin is dished slightly below the surface of the bone, someone sanded the handle and the softer material gave way around the harder pin. And look at the edge for color. Temper colors are the ASM Handbook's own oxide chart. Straw at about 400 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough that a drop of water skates across the steel instead of boiling. Blue at around 570. If you see either one on a thin edge or a tip, the hardness in that steel is gone and it is not coming back without a full rehardening. A blade that ran 58 on the Rockwell C scale is now somewhere in the 40s and will roll over on a cardboard box. That is the whole cost of the mirror polish method in one sentence. It rounds every reference surface that proves the knife is original, and it softens the only part that has to be hard. Sign number 7 is the free one, and it is the reason I told you to wait. It is everything that came in the drawer with the knife, the little cardboard tube, the 2-piece box with the pattern number penciled on the end flap, the tissue paper, the warranty card from 1963, the hardware store receipt, the sheath, the note in your father's handwriting, the Christmas tag. Collectors call it provenance, and on old American cutlery, the box alone routinely adds 50 to 100%, and on some patterns it doubles the number outright. There are Remington and Winchester knives where the correct original box is worth more than a lesser example of the knife itself, and a written line, a name, a date, a unit, a shop, turns an anonymous object into a documented one. That is the whole difference between an old knife and an artifact. Cost $0. Time 10 seconds, which is how long it takes to look in the drawer before you throw anything out. Here is why it has saved more knives than anything else I teach. When a man finds the box, he slows down, he stops seeing a rusty tool and starts seeing an object with a history, and he puts the sandpaper away and calls somebody. I have taken maybe 200 phone calls that started with the words, "I found the box." Store it right, and it stays valuable. Keep the knife out of the original leather sheath for long-term storage, because vegetable tanned leather holds acid and moisture against steel and will pit a blade right through. The National Park Service says the same thing in its Conserve O-Gram guidance on storing metal objects. Keep relative humidity under about 45%, which the Canadian Conservation Institute puts as the practical threshold for iron. A $12 hygrometer and a few packets of silica gel in a closed drawer will do it. Keep the box next to the knife, not on it. If there is a check I skipped, put it in the comments and tell me what you look at first on a knife you have never seen before. Next time I want to do the one people ask about most, which is how to safely stabilize an active red rust blade at home in 48 hours without removing a single thousandth of base metal. Somewhere right now, a man is holding a knife over a buffing wheel because he saw it done without a single word of explanation. It will come out beautiful. It will come out worthless. Old steel is worth money because of what it kept, not because of what it reflects. Every hour of shining is an hour of erasing. Blade geometry, $4 for a rule. The tang stamp, $12 for a loop. The patina, $3 for mineral oil. The handle material, free with your fingertips. The walk and the talk, $3 for machine oil. The absence of the buffer, $6 for a pen light. And the box in the back of the drawer, which costs nothing. $31 all in, and every tool on that list will outlive you. Against that, on a single good pre-1965 pocket knife, one Saturday morning with the wrong wheel is a 4-figure mistake, and I have made it. The shiniest knife in the room is almost always the cheapest one in the room. That is not an opinion. That is the price guide.